Let's go through the obligations of service providers under the European Accessibility Act. And we're going to use the blog post that's on the screen with me from accessible.org to guide us through the discussion. Now, remember that with obligations, these are separate, these are distinct from requirements. So, service providers have technical requirements that they need to meet for EAA compliance, but they also have obligations to meet. And so, with obligations, just think of administrative or paperwork for, in this case, service providers. So let's go ahead and scroll down the blog post, and we're just going to go through. There's only a few obligations, so we're just going to go through them quickly. Number one, service providers shall ensure that they design and provide services in accordance with the accessibility requirements of this directive. So that's self-explanatory. And then number two, service providers shall prepare the necessary information in accordance with Annex 5 and shall explain how the services meet the applicable accessibility requirements. The information shall be made available to the public in written and oral format, including it in a manner which is accessible to persons with disabilities. Service providers shall keep that information for as long as the service is in operation. So what this means is that service providers must create and share information about how their services meet accessibility standards. So it's not enough that they're meeting the accessibility standards. Service providers also have to share information about how they meet the standards. So they need to provide this information in a means that is accessible, and again, both written and spoken forms, and ensuring that people with disabilities have access to it. So that's the obligation here, and it's not enough just to meet the technical standards. Service providers also have to share information about how they meet the technical requirements. And part of this here is probably to ensure that the technical standards are actually met. All right, so continuing to obligation 3. And then it starts off, without prejudice to Article 32, service providers shall ensure that procedures are in place so that the provision of services remains in conformity with the applicable accessibility requirements. Changes in the characteristics of the provision of service, changes in applicable accessibility requirements, and changes in the harmonized standards or in technical specifications by reference to which a service is declared to meet the accessibility requirements shall be adequately taken into account by the service providers. So this means that service providers need to have processes in place to ensure their services continue to meet the accessibility standards. So they need to consider any changes in how the service is provided, any updates to the accessibility requirements, and any changes to the relevant standards or specifications that define what accessibility means. So basically, they stay on top of this and they stay current if there are any changes to the most obvious example here would be how the services are provided. Then they stay current and they adapt and they make sure that their services remain in conformity with the technical accessibility requirements. All right, number 4. In the case of nonconformity, so in the case that the service providers do not meet the technical accessibility requirements, service providers shall take the corrective measures necessary to bring the service into conformity with the applicable accessibility requirements. Furthermore, where the service is not compliant with the requirements, service providers shall immediately inform competent national authorities of member states in which the service is provided, to that effect, giving details in particular of the non-compliance and any corrective measures taken. So I think this is fairly self-explanatory here. If there are any technical accessibility issues, so any instances where they are not meeting these accessibility requirements, then the service provider has to immediately bring the service into conformity. And if it's not compliant, then service providers also need to inform the authorities of what the non-compliance is, and then how they are working or how they have already fixed the technical accessibility issues. All right, and so the last obligation, obligation number 5, service providers shall further to a reasoned request from a competent authority provided with all the information necessary to demonstrate the conformity of the service with the applicable accessibility requirements. They shall cooperate with that authority at the request of that authority on any action taken to bring service into compliance with those requirements. So if there is an authority and they are requesting accessibility information, that needs to be provided. So all information necessary to demonstrate the conformity of the service with the applicable accessibility requirements. Again, it's just we need to know that you do indeed meet these technical requirements, and we need to have the information necessary to demonstrate that conformity. So you don't want to whoever, no matter whether you're a service provider or a product manufacturer, you want to take this seriously. You don't want to take this flippantly. You want to make sure that you have everything in place, that you have taken care of the accessibility, and that you have the information and or documentation to demonstrate that your, in this case, service is indeed conformant with these accessibility requirements that are in the European Accessibility Act. So these are the obligations. Remember, just think of these as the administrative or the paperwork side, and then the technical requirements are the technical side of accessibility. So there are the responsibilities, those are the technical responsibilities, and then, or the requirements. I said responsibilities. Requirements is the operative word, and then there are the obligations. And we just went over the obligations. So I have another video on the technical requirements. I will link to that video. If you need any help with compliance with the European Accessibility Act, feel free to reach out to me. I will include a link to the accessible.org contact page in the description, as well as the services that we offer. I will also include a link to the blog post that I've used to guide us through this discussion. So all of these resources will be included in the description for this video.